Okay, match number 2. We are on the draw. Our hand is keepable, and we're probably going to cycle away this Baron more on turn 1 to try to find some more action just than the single angler that we have. But this hand has lands and spells and ways to draw more cards, so I like it. Our opponent is playing a Tortured Existence deck. This is a very powerful card. Indicates a graveyard deck, which is pretty unfortunate for us because we are not high on the graveyard hate. We don't have any in our sideboard. We just have a single Bojuka Bog main. Black-green, okay. So Tortured Existence says, black, discard a creature card, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So the primary combo with this is having Golgari Brownscale in your deck, which is a dredge creature. And you dredge that creature back, and then you discard it, and you can get any creature in your graveyard every single turn. So instead of drawing from your deck, you can draw from among all the creatures in your graveyard. So they have Gurmag Anglers and some other things that they can do that are pretty powerful that they can get back and play again and again. Alright. If we sign in blood ourselves, we're going to have to discard. Is that okay with us? It helps get the Gurmag Angler out faster. It helps us make sure we hit our land drops. Our opponent, how likely are they to play a creature? They're probably going to play like a Satyr Wayfinder next turn, which isn't particularly exciting to Victim of Night. I think I'm okay with discarding. I'll go ahead and sign in blood myself. And we'll discard a land, since we drew 2. Our opponent replays the swamp that they picked up with Golgari Rot Farm. And they have a Vampire Hounds. I have not seen this creature in Tortured Existence decks yet. Discard a creature card, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So it's like a Nantuko Husk, except you just get to get rid of a creature from your hand instead of the battlefield. That's pretty cool. Alright. And it is a vampire, so it can't be killed by Victim of Night, unfortunately. Well, this deck probably has way too much synergy around this creature to let this stay around, so we're going to Oubliette it. We could also Chainer's Edict, but this uses our mana better, and it means that it doesn't go to the graveyard. And this seems like a very good creature to not let our opponent recur back from the graveyard. Oubliette is a star in these kind of matches, because it gets rid of a creature permanently. Our opponent has a Wild Mongrel. 2 mana 2/2 lets them discard a card for +1/+1 until end of turn. It does not restrict 2 creature cards, and it can be killed by Victim of Night. And another Oubliette. Okay, I think I'll save that one. I'm going to go ahead and use a Chainer's Edict, and that way I can leave up Victim of Night for their turn. They're going to go ahead and discard some cards. Basking Rootralla. Okay, so it has a madness cost of 0, so they get to cast it in response. Let's see if our opponent discards any more cards. Okay, they get rid of the Rootralla, as expected. Do we want to kill that on their turn or our turn? I think I'm going to go ahead and wait till their upkeep, just in case. I don't think there's really a big difference. I don't want to go to their draw step, because they might draw something that they want to discard. Alright, they're going to use Tortured Existence, discarding Arrogant Worm to get back Basking Rootralla. Okay, well I'm going to go ahead and Victim of Night this Wild Mongrel now, so that the Madness 0 creature won't be in their hand, and they won't be able to replay it. Okay, so now they're getting a Basking Rootralla back, but they can't discard it to Wild Mongrel to give it +1/+1. They can only discard it to Tortured Existence. I'm going to pop out the graveyard for this match as well. It's going to be very important to know what our opponent's graveyard is. Commune with the Gods. Let's see what they grab from that. They take a Grave Scrabbler, so let's see what card that is. Well, this is a very cool card in graveyard decks. 4 mana 2/2, Madness for 1 and a black. When it enters the battlefield, if its Madness cost was paid, you may return target creature card from a graveyard to its owner's hand. It's like a draw 2 kind of effect, because you get the creature plus you get the creature you bring back. We could play an Angler this turn. We could play Rats and an Angler, but that would require getting rid of the Chainer's Edict in our yard, which seems like a bad decision. We know there's a Rootralla that's probably coming down this turn, possibly getting back an Arrogant Worm or something. I think I'm just going to go ahead and play the Gurmag Angler. We need to beat our opponent very quickly, because they can generate a ton of value over the course of the game with Tortured Existence and Golgari Brownscale, and they have a lot of ways to generate value with their graveyard. And since we can't interact with their graveyard, we just need to kill them as quickly as possible. I didn't want to go with the Chittering Rats plan, though, because I do think that the Chainer's Edict in our yard is also important. So I'm not so aggressive that I want to throw away the Chainer's Edict to play the Rats this turn. Our opponent did not use the Dredge option on Brownscale, they just drew normally. They can only use this once per turn. If they have another one, they could not pump both of them because they only have access to one green mana, so we don't need to worry about our creature dying in combat unless they also have a combat trick, I believe. We may want to Chainer's Edict first anyway. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, just in case there's something in our opponent's deck that we're not thinking about. Although I guess now our opponent can discard a card, get back the Root Wallet, discard the Root Wallet, have it for 0, and play it there anyway. Let's see what our opponent does. Alright, so they're going to do that trick. Probably going to chump with this Grave Scrabbler, have it go to the graveyard. I don't know enough about this deck to know how dead we are right here, but it looks like our opponent can probably play a chump blocker every single turn for the rest of the game while building up their hand. And I don't know that we have much of a chance, unless we oubliette some key creatures. What should I cast? I think I'm going to go with Phyrexian Raider. I need to draw some more gas. Preferably a Bajuka Bog. Grey Merchant, okay. Well, that's a way we can kill around, even around chump blockers. So next turn, if I draw a Swamp, I can go Chittering Rats and Oubliette, hopefully a key creature. And then the turn following, I can Grey Merchant for a bunch. Wild Mongrel. Our opponent can discard a ton of cards and probably not feel sad about it. What should I do? If I Grey Merchant, it'll be for 6 devotion and then for 8 devotion, assuming they don't remove our creatures and we don't attack. I would like to kill my opponent, though. Preferably with only Grey Merchant triggers, if possible. Should I Oubliette the Wild Mongrel or play a Chittering Rats is the question. I think I'd rather Oubliette, go ahead and get this Wild Mongrel away. And then I might actually attack at this point. Force our opponent to make a chump blocker for our Gurmag Angler. They're playing the Grave Scrabbler again. Pay the mana's cost, make a 2/2, get back either a Brownscale. Okay, getting back the Brownscale. They gain 2 life, because that's what Golgari Brownscale does when it's returned from your graveyard to your hand. You gain 2 life, which is a way they could get out of range of Grey Merchants. I think I need to attack here. I know our opponent can trade and then chump and probably still be doing fine, but I just want to be as aggressive as possible, put this game away quickly. Not letting our opponent get a board state in addition to the value that they're generating would probably be a good idea. So it may not look like our opponent is doing much, they're just cycling stuff back and forth, but at this point they have 3 cards more in their hand than us, only 1 less mana, and they probably have a lot of really cool things they could be doing. Disfigure. That's pretty bad against Wild Mongrel. We could force them to use a card. Let's see, if they discard 3 cards, and then we disfigure it, they would have to discard 2 more cards, so they'd have to discard 5 cards to kill with the Mongrel alone. I guess we can Chittering Rats first, and have them have 1 less card to work with. So they'd have to discard their entire hand to kill with Wild Mongrel alone if we also disfigure it. I really want to keep this Angler around. Getting back Basking Root Wallow, so they can have a chump blocker. Even if we kill it before blocks, they can just do the trick again. Getting back a Grave Scrabbler. Although at this point, now that they're tapped out, it could not do that. Yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and kill this pre-combat. I'm not going to be able to kill the Wild Mongrel with it, because they can discard a single card. So I'm going to let them trade here if they want to discard 3 whole cards, which I don't think they're going to want to do. They'll probably just take the 5 damage, which I think is a pretty worthy use of the Disfigure. Next turn, if we Grey Merchant, we'll have 9 Devotion, and then 11, which is 20. So our opponent can do a really cool trick where they have 3 black mana, so they could discard Golgari Brown Scale, targeting a creature to get back, and then discard that creature, getting back the Brown Scale, and gain with three, they can either activate it once every turn cycle or twice every other turn cycle. So a total of 3 activations every 2 turn cycles, or 6 life every 2 turn cycles, which means they might be able to get out of range. I think I should attack first. Probably not with the Chittering Rats, although that might actually be fine. The problem is with the Chittering Rats is that a Basking Rootwalla plus a pump can kill it. That will require our opponent to use up green mana. This is very difficult. If I play a Grey Merchant first, then our opponent knows we're tapped out and can't use a removal spell. I think I'm just going to play this Grey Merchant, and then next turn see what I'm going to do after that. If our opponent doesn't do the Golgari Brown Scale trick to gain a ton of life, then we could have a shot this game. Or if we draw another Grey Merchant, that would also be incredible. They're discarding Arrogant Worm, so they can pay the Madness cost. Okay. I probably should have known that was in their hand. I'm having a very hard time keeping track of all the things that are going on. It's a 4/4 they can put into play. Putting a Rootwalla into play right now, indicating they want it to not be summoning sick next turn. And the value just continues. Now they have as much mana as we do. 3 more cards and the same number of creatures on the battlefield, and theirs kind of outclass ours. I'm just going to take all of this damage. I don't know what tricks they have. I don't want to have to think about it, and I think we're winning this damage race because they don't know we have a Grey Merchant. Unless they play, well, they can't play another land. They already played one this turn. Oh, an Angler's coming down? Okay. They also turned off their own Tortured Existence, although they can get that back online with a Wild Mongrel discard. Well, Victim of Night can't kill Gurmag Angler, which is obviously a problem. Let's see, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. So if we try to kill them with Grey Merchant, what's going to happen is they're going to discard a card, Golgari Brown Scale, to the Wild Mongrel. And then they're going to return it to their hand with Tortured Existence and gain 2 life. However, then they'll have 2 blockers versus 3 attackers, and they should be dead. Let's see if our opponent has to tap out to do that. I guess they'll still have 2 mana remaining. I should have been keeping track a little bit more of what our opponent has in hand exactly. Alright, they're doing the trick now, getting back to Brown Scale. Grave Scrabbler, which is presumably going to cast now. So they have 3 blockers versus our 3 attackers, but they choose not to. Okay. So if they have another Basking Rootwalla, they can cast it. If they have another Grave Scrabbler, they can cast it. I think I'm going to go ahead and attack. If I've forgotten something, then our opponent can punish us pretty badly for it by killing our Grey Merchant, chumping our Gurmag Angler, and then putting their final creature that they can discard to on the stack. Or if they have a removal spell, we're in trouble. But we'll see. We'll make our opponent have it. Our opponent is discarding Golgari Brown Scale again. Oh, they got it back. Okay, that makes sense. So they're going to gain 2 more life. So we lose our Grey Merchant in the process, and our opponent stays at 2. So if we draw exactly Grey Merchant, we have 2 left in the deck. We should be able to outrace Golgari Brown Scale of getting recurred over and over again. They're dredging it back for another 2 life. And let's see how aggressive our opponent's attacks are here. They use the dredge ability on their Brown Scale, so they have extra cards in their graveyard now, including a Stinkweed Imp. Well, this is pretty interesting. Let's go ahead and Victim of Night Wild Mongrel. So they have to make any decisions they want to make about discarding cards to that right now. Sign in Blood can be used to target our opponent, which is pretty sweet. discarding Fairy Macabre, turning Grave Scrabbler. Okay. So currently, the only card they have is Grave Scrabbler, which they can discard, targeting the card, and then play for its madness cost, and then get back any creature. Presumably Brown Scale, gaining 2 life, or possibly Root Walla. So they could put down a 2/2 and a Root Walla, and be able to pump the Root Walla, so they could have a 3/3 and a 2/2. So the 3/3 would block the rats, anglers would block each other, and the 2/2 would block Gray Merchant. If I play Chittering Rats first, I think that's our best option, is to wait one more turn. I don't think our opponent can generate enough value to play enough blockers to prevent taking 2 damage next turn. We do this, and their opponent has to do everything now as well before blocks. Okay. Discarding Grave Scrabbler, targeting Basking Root Walla, putting their Madness Trigger on the stack, so they're getting back Brown Scale and Root Walla. And we'll see, we actually don't get to see which card they put back with Chittering Rats, but they have to put one of them back with Chittering Rats. Alright, and they're discarding Basking Root Walla, getting back Wild Mongrel, playing the Root Walla. So now they have Wild Mongrel and Golgari Brown Scale in hand, and they put one of them back. So our opponent's completely tapped out. If we attack, the Grave Scrabbler could block Chittering Rats. So they could trade 2 times and chump with Root Walla. I did not like our position in this game at all. I think I'm just going to have to keep on passing. This deck is very strong whenever you can't interact with it. Especially the Golgari Brown Scale trick of gaining 2 life 2 or 3 times a turn cycle is pretty incredible. There's the Wild Mongrel. Last card is Stinkweed Imp because they dredged it back. A Disfigure. Okay, I don't think that's helpful. I think we're past the point of signing blooding our opponent. I think we need to dig for Gray Merchants. Ooh, that's pretty cool. I don't know if it's enough, but it should do something. We'll cycle this Baron more. We don't want to play that either. A Pestilence. That could also be good. So should I wait on this Bojuka Bog until I get the Pestilence online? That seems like a pretty good idea. I think I'll just pass the turn. I'll plan on disfiguring at some opportune moment. And then next turn I'll play Pestilence. Alright. I think I'm going to kill the Wild Mongrel right now, while this triggers on the stack and our opponent has no cards in hand. I think this is the best use we're going to get out of this Disfigure. They're going to gain another 2 life from the Brown Scale. Discard Brown Scale for Root Walla. Discard Root Walla for Fume Spitter. Cast the Root Walla and have a Fume Spitter in hand. And we'll see whether they use the dredge ability of either of those creatures next turn. Okay, they are dredging with Brown Scale. They put a Crypt Rats into their bin. That's one of the ways this deck can kill, is that they keep on gaining life with Golgari Brown Scale till they're winning in life, and then they use Crypt Rats to burn the opponent out. Alright. I think I'm going to block this, let them have it in their graveyard to prevent taking 2 damage, because I want to be able to stay ahead, and so this Pestilence will be better for me. There's the Fume Spitter they got back, and they're passing the turn with Golgari Brown Scale in hand. Okay, so I'm going to lead off with the Pestilence. I'm going to plan on pinging everything for 1 to force them to do something with the Fume Spitters and the Basking Root Wallas. And we'll see where we go from there. Alright, they're putting a -1/-1 counter on our Gurmag Angler, so it trades with the Arrogant Worm, and letting everything else die. Beautiful. Alright, I think this is my moment. I'm going to go ahead and Bojuka Bog, and we'll see how much our opponent can get back into their hand. Or if this is the nail in the coffin. So Brown Scale getting back Grave Scrabbler, that makes sense. Discarding Grave Scrabbler, getting back Crypt Rats. playing Grave Scrabbler for its madness cost, getting back one more card, so they're going to have Brown Scale and Crypt Rats in hand. Gain another 2 life, and now the trigger will finally resolve. Okay, so they have a Brown Scale and a Crypt Rats. And no way to discard cards unless one of their creatures die. That might be enough for us to win with Pestilence. We shall see. One trick you can do with Pestilence is we can wait till their end step, blow up everything with Pestilence, we untap, and then we use Pestilence again for its full amount. Because Pestilence only checks at the beginning of the end step, or every single end step. So if we do it during their end step, we get 2 uses of Pestilence, even though there'll be no creatures on the board at the end of their turn. So they're playing the Crypt Rats. We knew they had that. They also have a Brown Scale in hand. So they can use Crypt Rats for 1 or 2. If they do it for 1, they could then Tortured Existence, discarding Brown Scale or another card that they have drawn. A creature card if they've drawn a creature card. Getting back a card, but that does not gain them life. If we try to attack and then use Pestilence as much as we can to try to force through as much damage as possible, that'd be something. Our opponent could then use Golgari Brown Scale to get back their most important creature, say an Angler or a Crypt Rats, and replay it next turn. Possibly also Grave Scrabbler. This is a very interesting game. I could also just flash back a Chander's Edict this turn, but that seems much worse than anything else I could be doing. I think I'm going to pass the turn, make our opponent make the first move. I know I'm giving them more mana with which to get Brown Scale activations online, but they still don't have a discard outlet until they activate their Crypt Rats. See if our opponent's doing anything on our end step. What our opponent is calculating right now is probably if they can gain enough life so that they win the Pestilence race. If I do the trick of Pestilencing everything on their end step and then untapping and doing it some more. Alright, they don't try to do anything on our end step, and they're probably going to go to attacks here and force us to try to do something with Pestilence during their attack. Alright, they have a trample creature. I'm going to block, and I'm going to chump block. I don't want to take any damage. I want to try to stay ahead in the life gain race, or the life total race, so that Pestilence is better for me than the Crypt Rats is for our opponent. Disfiguring our Grey Merchant. That's fine with me. I'm planning on it dying anyway to Pestilence. Crypt Rats is dealing 2 damage to each creature and each player. That's also okay with me. I'll let that resolve. They might have been trying to deal 3 damage so that my Pestilence would go away at end step. But unfortunately, that's not what they've done. Unfortunately for them, it's good for us, because now we still get to do the Pestilence trick. They can only gain... well, they can't even gain any life with Golgari Brown Scale in hand, as far as we know. Because you don't get life from discarding it, you gain life from getting it back, and they need 2 black symbols for that, of which they currently only have 1. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do the Pestilence trick. Make sure Gurmag Angler dies. And we'll see how much life our opponent can gain, or how much damage they can do to us. Okay, our opponent is untapped. Or let us untap, rather. So let's not show them another Sign in Blood. I'm sure they know we have it, but there's no reason to. And we take down game 1. Incredible. I think if our opponent had Crypt Rats for 3 there, they might have been able to cause our Pestilence to be sacrificed without us having enough mana to be able to burn them out that turn. But I'm not sure about that. Anyway, we won the game. We don't have a lot of time left on our clock. And we also don't have anything in our sideboard specifically for this. So some mono black control decks run 2 Nihil Spellbomb, and I really wish I had room for them. It's just I thought these other cards were more important. So we don't have any Nihil Spellbomb. We only have 1 Bojuka Bog main deck. The rest isn't particularly good in a deck that's based around creatures, unless we can nab Tortured Existence. The problem with Tortured Existence is it's a 1-drop, and our opponent's going to be on a play. So if they have it, they're just going to play it, unless they lead off with like a Jungle Hollow. So Duress is pretty hard to be useful, and they play, I believe, the full 4 Tortured Existence anyway. So discarding one of them from their hand isn't even a guarantee of being able to keep them from having it. Pestilence was pretty good there. However, they do have ways to gain life. I don't think it'll always be good. Wrench Mind is a way to kind of shut off the combo by making them unable to use Tortured Existence, by making them have no cards in hand. The problem is, even if I get them to 0 cards in hand, they can use a dredge ability or just draw into another creature and start using it again and gaining value. Font of Return could be good for a long game, trading off creatures and such. It looks like they don't really want to trade off creatures, they just want to keep on chump blocking when it doesn't even really cost them anything until they build up a big board state. I'm debating bringing in the second Pestilence over a Victim of Night, but I'm pretty worried that that's result-oriented thinking, that Pestilence won us that game, so therefore I think it's good. I'm not really sure that it is good. I think it's unique enough in its effect that I should consider it. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to bring in a Pestilence, take out a Victim of Night since it can't hit Angler. It can't hit that zombie creature, vampire creature that we saw first from them. I'm going to try to play a little bit quicker and see if we can take down at least one more game in this match. Okay, game number 2. We have a bunch of removal, including Oubliette. I think this is good enough. The upside here is that Oubliette removes something permanently, which is pretty good against our opponent. Sign in Blood, okay. I'd prefer to just draw a creature, but that will help us find creatures. We'll see what our opponent does. Tortured Existence, okay. And a tap land. Alright, Chainer's Edict is not an instant, so I can't hold that up. Neither is Sign in Blood, so I think I'll go ahead and use it, even though I have to discard. Quambage Witches. That's good against Rootwalla. Although they usually just chump block with it anyway. But not against many other things, so I think I'm going to discard that. Our opponent is playing a Forest and passing. Okay, looks like they have a slow start, which could be good for us. Play a Phyrexian Rager, draw a Swamp and pass. Okay, our opponent is cycling their Krosan Tusker. This is a pretty cool card. 7 mana, 6/5, cycling for 2 and a green. When you cycle it, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal that card, put it in your hand, and then shuffle your library. So they're getting a Swamp. And they also get to draw a card from the cycling. And now they have something in Graveyard to use Tortured Existence on. Wild Mongrel. Okay. Alright, we'll play Chainer's Edict. Our opponent will presumably get a Grave Scrabbler or Basking Rootwalla, or both online. But I'm just going to follow that up with another Chainer's Edict. If our opponent can do 2 creatures, then they'll get to save their Mongrel. I'm doing this over anything else because it's the most mana efficient. I realize I could also Tendrils the creature, but it wouldn't be guaranteed to kill it because he could discard 3 cards. Okay. Our opponent discards Golgari Brownscale to get the Rootwalla back. And they're discarding the Rootwalla to get the Krosan Tusker, casting it for 0. This might have just been a very poor play on our part with these Chainer's Edicts, knowing that our opponent can do this. Probably need to get at least the Wild Mongrel off the field since it discards cards for free before I try that kind of shenanigans in the future. Thrall Surgeon. That's interesting. One of the blacks, sacrifice it, look at target player's hand, choose a card from it, and that player discards it. And they can keep on getting that card back over and over again, so it's very good control sideboard for this deck. Presumably they're going to get rid of Pestilence or Oubliette. However, the other cards are also powerful, so we'll see what our opponent does. Tendrils of Corruption. Okay, they don't want us to gain life. Hopefully we draw a 2-drop here so we can play Oubliette and a 2-drop. Be mana efficient. Ooh, perfect. Just what I wanted. Go ahead and oubliette this wild mongrel out of the way, so we know exactly how many basking root wallows are coming down before we attack. Play a witches, and we'll go. We know our opponent has a Croson Tusker in hand, and some other cards. Our opponent does use the Dredge ability from the brown scale. So now they have a brown scale, a Croson Tusker, and we don't know what else. A Caterpillar. This must be why they were not afraid of the oubliette, because they brought in a sideboard card that can deal with it. What to do, what to do. Our opponent's definitely going to sacrifice his Caustic Caterpillar to get back their wild mongrel. I'm not sure what order they're going to do everything in, unfortunately. I think I'll lead off by playing Pestilence. And pass and make our opponent act first. They might also want to get rid of the Pestilence instead of the oubliette. Either one is really fine with me. We're behind our opponent on life total right now, so the Pestilence isn't actually that valuable. Okay, the Pestilence goes away. I can choose to use it once or twice. I definitely don't want to use it twice here for no reason. I'll go ahead and use it once. I realize I'm behind on life total, but our opponent needs to die sooner than later. Because we don't have a Bajuka Bog, and we're not going to be able to interact with them, and they're just going to keep on getting value like they did game 1. Croson Tusker is being cycled again for a card and a land. I'm going to try to play quickly. I don't think we're going to win this match. So save some time for game 3. Getting back Caustic Caterpillar with brown scale. So they can keep on reusing that. They can keep on reusing Thrall Surgeon. They can do whatever they want, basically. Sign in Blood. Let's see if we find a Bajuka Bog. No, a Grey Merchant. Okay. Let's play that. Force our opponent to act first by blowing up this oubliette. That gets rid of 2 Devotion on our side. And oubliette returns the creature tapped. However, they could replay... Oh, I'm going to try it anyway. They could play a Root Walla and be able to pump it. Yeah, I'm just being stupid here, aren't I? I didn't realize they already had one. Which I should have realized. So I'm throwing away a creature for basically no value. I guess Kuambaj Witches can turn it into a trade. Alright, discarding Fume Spitter. Getting back the Root Walla. Or discarding... Sorry, getting back Fume Spitter, discarding the Root Walla and using its Madness cost to cast it. But now because they use Tortured Existence, they don't have enough to also pump Basking Root Walla. Thrall Surgeon comes back. Chittering Rats goes away. Yeah, Chittering Rats goes away out of our hand. I think our goal this game is just going to be to make our opponent try to use more time on their clock than we use on ours when they beat us. So we have a little bit more breathing room for the next game. Bajuka Bog, beautiful. Let's see what our opponent can do this turn in response to that, or if this wipes them out. Could get rid of a Brown Scale, a Thrall Surgeon, a Scrabbler. Let's see what they try to do. So they're discarding Fume Spitter, getting back a Root Walla, and now they're presumably going to discard the Root Walla and cast it, getting back something else. Grave Scrabbler, okay. So now they have a Grave Scrabbler in hand. Okay. I don't want to run this Rager into the Mongrel, so I guess I'll just pass. Do I want to kill the Root Wall right now while I can? Yeah, I think so. Before they have a pump effect active. They probably don't mind this being in their graveyard. That means they don't have to discard a card with Mongrel to have a target for Tortured Existence, but I'm going to do it anyway. They target us, so we take a damage. Our opponent has Grave Scrabbler in hand, and we're not sure what else. We'd force to make them discard 2 cards if they want to get past Gray Merchant. We could force them to discard 3 cards if we want them to get past both of our creatures. We could force them to discard their hand if we wanted them to get past both of our creatures and kill them both. But they can still do the Basking Root Wallet trick. Yeah, I don't think this is worth it. We'll just let them do as much damage as they want to deal. There's the Grave Scrabbler. Presumably going to get cast for Madness, and the Root Wallet will come back. I don't believe we have knowledge of our opponent's hand, but there might be one thing in there that we know, besides the Root Wallet that's in there as of just now. Okay, our opponent's doing the trick with Root Wallet. Take our damage. Gray Merchant. Or we can use Chainer's Edict. I like Gray Merchant. That seems pretty good. Let's go ahead and lead off with that. If we just draw running Gray Merchants, we might have a shot this game. One more would be exactly 9 Devotion, assuming our opponent doesn't mess with our creatures at all. And assuming they don't find another brown scale to gain life with. Cycling a Baron more of their own. Opponent is attacking. I think I'm going to throw my Gray Merchant in front of this. Let them throw it in the graveyard if they want to. Or they can pump it to keep it around. Vines of Vastwood. Okay, so if I target it with Kuambaj Witches, we take an additional damage. And then our opponent pumps it with their mana option. I was not expecting Vines of Vastwood out of this deck at all. Is it worth making our opponent use the pump effect and spend 2 more mana? I guess that could be good. We'll take an additional damage to make them do that, but I think it's worth it. Okay. Our opponent pumps the Root Walla and then gets the Vines of Vastwood pumping it. So they kill our Gray Merchant in combat. We take our damage from the Mongrel and the turn passes. Alright, basic Swamp. That is not a good draw. So let's untap. Let's go ahead and kill this Root Walla. I know our opponent can replay it by getting it back with Torture Existence. But maybe, just maybe, our opponent does not make that play. Even though they seem like they're an expert with this deck. Our opponent is behind in time now, which is really the only important thing. They also have a brown scale, so they can gain 1 billion life, so they're going to get out of range of any Gray Merchants we could draw. So I think this game is pretty well put away in our opponent's favor. Our opponent just is going to sacrifice, the Grave Scrabbler. We're going to get in with some damage here, but we're going to lose this damage race since our opponent can keep on recurring brown scale for life. We're going to go through the motions of trying to make this work, though, just in case we draw some incredible combination of cards that does it. Opponent discards brown scale to the Mongrel so that they can dredge it, gaining 2 life. See how much damage we're going to take here. Just 3 right now. Okay. Should we attack into their Madness creatures, or should we not? I don't think so. I'm not going to throw away creatures just to deal some damage. I could also Chainer's Edict there, make them get rid of a Root Walla again, but it doesn't really do anything. I don't think anything we can do really does anything at this point. Alright. Discarding Grave Scrabbler, getting back brown scale, using the Grave Scrabbler effect to get back a Root Walla, so they'll have a Root Walla and a brown scale in hand. Gain 2 life from that. And then they're discarding it again so that they can use the dredge option again. And they're getting as much life as they can effectively by doing this trick where they discard the Root Wallet and pay its madness cost to get the Grave Scrabbler, or the Violent Scale back yet again. Discarding it again so that they can dredge it, gaining more life. This is getting really tiring saying all these things, because they're effectively doing the exact same thing every turn. They're just getting ridiculously far ahead by doing it. Because Tortured Existence is an excellent card. So, all the commentary for the rest of this game is pretty much they keep on discarding things and then getting them back, and then discarding things and then getting them back ad infinitum. There's a Vampire Hounds. We're probably dead on their next attack. Let's cycle this, see if we can find anything. Playing Edict just because we can. And I guess we're going to start chump blocking, since these Vampire Hounds and Wild Mongrels are starting to get into the very scary range. We could get rid of a Root Wallet here. It would cost us 1 life to do so. Or we could just chump the Root Wallet if it attacks next turn, which would cost us no life. Let's get rid of it, though. I realize our opponent can still get it back. I did this once they tapped out of... Oh, that was wrong of me. I should have waited till they used Torture Existence one more time. I wasn't paying attention to their mana floating. Oh well. I think this game was lost basically anyway we sliced it. Even though we drew Bojuka Bog, we could not make it work. Opponent attacks us for 8. We are forced to make blocks. And we're dead to the pump effects from 2 Root Wallows. I wasn't even paying attention to that. Okay, we're ahead on the clock, but we are now tied on a number of games. We can take a look at our sideboard again, but we still don't have any graveyard hate. I guess there's an argument for trying to be as fast as possible, but I think our deck is already pretty fast. I don't really see a way we could get faster. Maybe discarding Sign-In Bloods for Wrench Mines or Duresses. That's something. Yeah, let's do that. So let's discard 2, let's get rid of 2 Sign-In Bloods for 1 Duress to try to Mise and nab a Tortured Existence in a Wrench Mind. Although Wrench Mind's not going to do much. Let's get 2 Duresses. Alright, this is a good hand, good enough that I'm not going to keep on mulliganing trying to find a Duress. If I was planning on doing that, I should have put all 3 Duress in anyway. Our opponent mulligans to 6 and puts a card on top. Alright, and we're going to play as fast as humanly possible here, so that if anyone runs out of time, it's not us. Commune with the Gods. See what our opponent picks to put back in their hand. Caustic Caterpillar, okay. We'll pop out their graveyard as well. So they can start using the Dredge effect from Stinkweed Imp. And putting a ton of cards into their graveyard. And that'll probably be enough to kill us, because we have no way to interact with the graveyard right now. They have a Caterpillar as well, which we're probably going to destroy. And our opponent has a turn 3 Angler, which is not going to die to Tendrils of Corruption. Okay, so we're going to get rid of this Caustic Caterpillar so that we can Chainer's Edict away the Gurmag Angler. And we'll see if we draw another 2-mana spell to play as well. Vines of Vastwood. Oh my. Well, now the Chainer's Edict is not going to work. And we're going to be taking a lot of damage. Ooh, that was a good draw. So we're going to Chainer's Edict now, because we have Bojuka Bog. Bojuka Bog away 5 cards, and just leave our opponent with this Gurmag Angler. We're going to take our beats from it, but as soon as we draw a 5th Swamp, we'll be able to Tendrils it. So we might just win this game. Vampire Hounds. Okay, so they can stock their graveyard. They still don't have a Tortured Existence. And they don't have a Dredge creature that we know of. An Angler of our own. We could play that and get rid of our Chainer's Edict. Or we could try to kill his Vampire Hounds and gain life. I kind of like that. Oh, actually, you know what? I'm going to do this right now so they can't pay the madness cost for anything except for Basking Root Walla. So we're going to gain life, even if they have 2 creature cards. Well, I guess if they had 2 creature cards, they could have made it survive. Okay. Take some damage, but we already gained some life, so that's okay. Now we're going to be able to play Angler without getting rid of our Chainer's Edict. Okay, we need an Oubliette right now. No Oubliette. Okay. We can't play 2 spells in a turn, no matter how we slice it. So what do? We don't really want that Stinkweed Imp to die, because then he gets to start dredging and filling up his graveyard again. So I think we're just going to play Angler to block their Angler. And take the damage from the Stinkweed Imp. Hope they don't have another Vines of Vastwood here. They do not. Another Stinkweed Imp. So our opponent's going to be able to block with those. Alright, we'll play the Rager. I know this costs us life, but it gives us devotion. Play the Witches, and we'll hope that Grey Merchant gaining life outraces these Stinkweed Imps. Thrall Surgeon. Okay, so they're going to take our Grey Merchant. They could take the Tendrils, but the Tendrils forces us to kill a Stinkweed Imp, which they're really wanting us to do so they can dredge. Okay. Disfigure. That was actually a pretty good draw, I think. So we're going to kill one of them on their attack, and then Tendrils the other. Actually, let's start off with Tendrils, because we want... Well, no. Let's start off with Disfigure. They know we have the Tendrils, so if they have Vines, they might not go for it. I think I'm just going to do this. The odds of them having 2 Vines aren't very high. I don't want to take any damage if I don't have to. Alright, let's see if our opponent can kill us in 40 seconds. They have 1 card in hand. If we draw even a land, we get to flashback Chainer's Edict, and we have a removal spell. So I think we win this match. Tortured Existence. Okay, do they have a creature card? We shall see. If they've got a Madness creature in hand, like a 5/5, we could be in, or the 4/4 Trampler, we could be in big trouble. Looks like they do not. Alright, they're dredging Stinkweed Imp back to their hand. So now they can get that Arrogant Worm online. Alright, let's go ahead and Chittering Rats first. Give them 1 less card to work with. And I don't want to fool around with this stupid Arrogant Worm when they only have 21 seconds to win left, so I'm just going to keep passing. Alright, Stinkweed Imp, Arrogant Worm. Getting Thrall Surgeon. Okay. Playing their Arrogant Worm. Even combining Disfigure with Kuombai Witches is not enough to kill that, unfortunately. So they have the Thrall Surgeon, they're presumably going to play it and sacrifice it to figure out what our last card is. And our opponent loses to time. Alright, if our opponent played their Thrall Surgeon first, assuming they had enough time, we would have to Disfigure in response. That would turn them off of 1 attack step, effectively, because they'd have a 2/2 and they wouldn't want to trade with one of our 2/2s. Eventually, we would probably have lost this game. Because of the Stinkweed Imp's ability to dredge and fill up their graveyard and give them plenty of targets for their Tortured Existence. Unless we drew a... Well, I guess we already used our Bojuka Bug, didn't we? And we don't have another one. But unfortunately, time is a factor on Magic Online. It could have done us in as well, but we started playing faster. So I'll take the win as I can get it, and I will warn myself and other people, you probably shouldn't skimp on the Nihil Spellbombs in your sideboard, because this deck seems pretty powerful. I don't know how popular it is, but it could grow more popular if people, don't play enough Nihil Spellbombs and Bojuka Bugs. I'm not sure right now what I would cut from my sideboard for them, but I'd probably try to make room the next time that I play this deck in a league. Alright, on to match 3.